for a response back, we can enter that in the system in 2 minutes. Like we get the
Okay.
call, emergency situation, we need X, Y, and Z.
Yes,
You as a resident have signed up for
yes.
however you want to be
Text
contacted.
messages,
Those messages go out to all those people. Now, exceptions are going to be if you've given me a bad phone number. We will still have to have police backup support for that. But we will be able to get to the majority of people much faster than trying to go door to door or having public safety go out, trying to get rid of,
So the police chief or the fire chief
Yep.
contacts you or some person,
correct.
and they,
You go into the system,
they do this within a couple of minutes?
yeah. You go into the system, you type an email, you read the email into their voicemail system, and it generates it for you.
Right.
So everybody on the list, say 2,600 households, in 2 minutes' time, get email, text message, phone calls
Okay,
about the same, it's the same message to everybody.
yeah.
Jamie, where's the weak link? This is,
The weak link is a bad phone number.
okay, how about notification? 1 AM, truck overturns, we want to get a message out.
I can do it right from home.
Okay,
I can do it, anybody can,
so, okay,
yes.
so
The police can
an
do it,
officer calls you,
or they can do
will
it.
the police department, that's what,
Well, that would be-
what,
that's
how
the
many
policy.
different
That would be
entities?
the
There's the
policy.
policy.
Policy would be
Okay.
written to say,
Who's
if
gonna
it
have access
happens,
to this?
who's the 24-hour contact?
Right.
Now-
Who's the daytime contact?
Now, like we discussed before, that may be something the officer will not have time for. I'm going bang, bang, I called, I've notified 911 and vice versa. And that phone call can come from 911 to somebody designated to put that in right away. And in an emergency situation, nobody should be able to be awoken at 2 a.m.
What's up, sorry?
In an emergency situation, nobody should be concerned about being
Oh,
woken
yeah.
up at 2 a.m. So,
If they're the contact, it's going
That's
to
correct.
pass this information, to pull the trigger on the shotgun information.
right.
Yeah, that's a good point, because then, if that thing does go out at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're all gonna be woken up.
But you've asked for that information. You have asked to be notified of that emergency situation. And in the case that you're living there, good that we're notifying you.
But are there time, like, can you say, I only wanna be notified between such and such a time, or?
Well, about a bowling event, I would say you set a time, but if it's an emergency, I want to know.
Right, if it's emergency,
But if
maybe
it's-
select your text, and if it's recreation
Right.
related, email.
Or, next week, Crafton Boulevard's going to be closed from X time to daytime. You're not going to send that phone call out. And actually, when you go into the system, you can tell it what time you want it to call. Like, I can go in, for argument's sake, I'm, a night owl, set something at 11 o'clock at night, I type it out, but it will send the message at a prescribed time. So that it wouldn't necessarily be going into too much.
So we can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you can, like, if something happens in one area, that's considered a hazard or emergency, and that information goes into the system, like, my question is, if it doesn't affect the other
All the
side.
residents?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, that information.
We can set up grids for it, we can set up regions, and so what you would do, it would take a little bit of time, but you will set up groups, user groups. And they, we could do it from the old wards, we could do it from neighborhoods, pick coordinates that we want to use to notify people. And so you can select user groups to get that information. We may have registers that, people that only want information about Steuben Street, for argument's sake. We can set up a user for that.
So in the interest of time, I think this is something, it sounds like a positive move forward. Let's have the understanding that we'll start this, right? We're not gonna use this until we've approved the policy around who has access to it, how the message is drafted, who can send it, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems like we can get started, at least here,
Yeah.
moving forward, and then, and pending the policy. So if there's any other discussion on it, let's go to a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Amendola.
Yes.
Ms. Amendola.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes?
Mr. Phillips.
No.
Ms. Post.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to contract with Holt Web Design LLC as Crafton Borough's mass communication administrator to monitor the setup and one-way communication materials to Crafton residents for 1 year, at a cost not to exceed $1,000. So if it's not moved, just move on.
Yeah, move on.
All right, I'll move on. I'll entertain a motion to contract with Ring Central for the provision of a new telephone system for Crafton Borough at the lowest responsible proposal submitted at $4,100 for hardware purchase and setup fees and $316 a month for phone service. I guess we move on from that one.
Yes.
I'll move that one. I was just looking for it, I'm sorry. I moved the motion.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second so we can talk about it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's discuss.
Does anybody have the page number in Covey? It's like
26.
20, okay, good, I'm not.
So, we have phone service now, right? And is it expired? Is that the idea?
Our phone service is about, our best guesstimate, 18 to 20 years old of the hardware. We've had a number of problems over the past several months. And we discussed this even before we had the problems. We need a new system. We need new hardware, we need a new system. We solicited proposals, as was indicated at the working meeting. I think we have 5 or 6 proposals. We looked at the costs, they were presented. Right now, we're paying $544 a month. That would go down to $316 a month. Right now, we have budgeted, I believe, about $10,000. This cost, a one-time cost for the hardware, is $4,100, and I believe we stick with Verizon as our telephone provider. Our current lease expires with Avaya on March 14th.
Okay, so we need to do something on this.
Was the 10,000 budgeted amount the setup cost, or was it 10,000 budgeted, was the setup cost plus the 316 times 12?
The budget was based on whatever the previous year's cost was at that time. You're talking about the 2014 budget for that line item?
Yes,
That was based on previous costs. This would actually be less than
okay.
What was the previous cost?
that. I don't know, Mary, I don't have that in front of me,
What was the previous month cost?
but per year, it's better than 10,000.
Oh, yeah,
$608.83 a month, is that right? Current hardware provider is Avaya, current home service provider is Verizon. Total for all is $608.83.
Per month.
For what?
Per month.
Per month.
So essentially, this new company's gonna be charging half. Is that right?
According to what was submitted, yes.
Yeah. It's a
But
pretty good deal.
There's
That
no,
doesn't include the phone service, like Verizon, or, actually, we have two providers right now. We have Verizon for the police and Earthlink for the administrative office. This is just the telephone system itself,
Just for the phones.
Nuts and bolts.
the phone system.
But it still goes down from,
We'll still be reducing our monthly cost.
so this, it just says IP phone for 4,100. The rest of the quotes actually itemize the hardware that's included. Forgive my ignorance, but I don't know what, like an IP phone is not literally what we're getting.
We're getting phone units, yes.
Okay, but the rest of them are, actually look like they're detailing what the units are. Like the Comcast is compact flash Mitel 5008, and then there's there are, in the included documents, there's actually, you know, pictures and so forth, so we can see what exactly. I mean, I would defer to you because you're the ones who are using it.
This is a Polycom Soundpoint IP 321 and 331.
Yeah, so that's listed in the
That's on
proposal.
page 30.
Okay.
Yeah, mine's 38 of 62, and it lists, it shows pictures of the phone.
I'm 35 of 60. I'm looking at the actual page number on here,
Oh,
at the bottom of each page.
oh, I see. Okay. Any other discussion on this, or do you want to wait for a roll call vote? Hearing no discussion, let's do a roll call.
I have one more, it says the amount per month. Is this a one-year contract? How long is this for?
We're- The monthly cost is the telephone service, not the hardware. The hardware we're buying.
The hardware we're buying,
So that the monthly service cost is gonna go down from $544 to $316 a month.
okay, but
Right.
for how long are we talking? How long are we connected to this?
Verizon, as long as we want to, I guess. I don't know if we have a set contract for Verizon, it's just month to month.
But the Ring Central is, we're only purchasing the actual equipment from them, correct?
That is correct.
And then the
We're still using
$360
Verizon and we're still using the service.
And $316 a month is for the
Part of
Verizon
that,
service?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing, who's this Ring Central, who are they? Is that another CMIT company?
I'm sorry?
I'm looking at the thing and the details is, it's a CMIT company or it says CMIT Options?
It's not a CIMIT company, that's a company that is recommended and suggested by them, along with another company called Jive, which I've interviewed, and I didn't care for that. Again, I'm looking at cost, looking at affordability, so.
That was the cheapest amount you got in.
Correct. From the 5 or 6 that we solicited from, yes.
Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to submit an application for a graduate intern through the local government academy for Crafton's Abandoned Blight Property Review Committee staff assistance at a cost of $5 per hour for a maximum of 480 hours.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Assuming we have a committee.
But that was gonna be.
Yeah.
So, we know that we have the interest of having the committee, and we're going to move forward with that. Is this when I asked you about the timeline, I was thinking about reading this, so is this has to be done so that we can secure somebody by a certain date?
There's no guarantee we will. We put in the application, we'll know by March 21st if we're in or not.
Okay,
Well, I feel comfortable that we're going to form this committee, you know, so it's not at risk that if we hired an intern, there'll be nothing to do. So I'm comfortable moving forward with this motion.
Agreed.
Is there any other discussion? Let's take a roll call.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. All right. I'll entertain a motion to enter into an agreement with eCollect Turnkey for services as it relates to collection of delinquent business privilege tax and mercantile tax in accordance with the terms of the proposal, subject to solicitor's review.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's discuss this motion.
We had discussed in the committee agenda meeting that we had 2 weeks ago about this opportunity, saying that, you know, with, even with the ratio, I forget, what was it, 15% of what was collected, but what was collected is not what we're receiving right now, so we discussed that it pretty much was a win for us. and acknowledging Mr. Johnson's, his comments earlier, he had stated, you know, the beta testing, we did approve beta testing back last, thank you, last August. I was curious myself, where did we stand with that? With the beta testing, I was expecting that we were gonna get some results so that we knew we're ready to go, and when we approve this, we can start collecting that. And I don't feel that we got that answer in the presentation. I feel that it's very worthwhile, but I like to see something tangible.
Well, Mr. Phillips, when you spoke to Mark Schuster, was there any discussion around the results of the beta test?
He didn't mention the beta testing at all, but what we are looking at is, even if we approve this, it's not gonna cost us anything. Say they don't give us the results we need, we're not gonna lose, they're not gonna win. That's all I'm looking at.
Okay.
He didn't mention the beta testing at all.
Can
And I didn't mention
we
it.
reach out to him and ask him for his report? I mean,
It does feel a little like the beta testing kind of fell off the
just because we're
radar.
not losing or gaining anything if we approve, it's still like,
We should close the loop.
yes.
Yeah. So I know Mr. Phillips had reached out to Mark, and I've spoken to Mark as well. We did discuss the contract at length. There were some changes to the contract. It was first a 3-year contract. It was reduced to a 1-year contract. And I discussed at length with Mr. Schuster that we, as a body, get to decide what we choose to collect. So if we find that someone has been delinquent for 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, they do get paid on what they collect, but we get to decide on what we want to collect. So if we decided on a case-by-case basis that we didn't want to collect because it would put undue hardship on a company, we could choose not to do that, and they wouldn't get paid. And Mr. Schuster had said that he hopes that we don't take that tack with everything they find, because then they'll get paid zero. But the contract is written in such a way that we determine what we can collect and what we don't, and he was still comfortable with that. So I believe that the contract is actually sound, right, and it's a contract that favors us, but I'm fine with tabling this for 2 weeks until we see what the results of the beta test were, if there was any beta tests, right? And if there was no beta test, why not, right? It still might be fine, even without the results of a beta test or a beta test being done, that we want to move forward with this. But I think Mr. Schuster owes us an explanation of what happened with the beta test.
I agree.
The beta test was specifically designed for the earned income tax as it relates to Act 32, of how much we're either collecting or not collecting, or are we legitimately collecting. We determined that there was 117 addresses for which we are receiving earned income tax that doesn't belong to Crafton. Belongs to either Robinson Township or any other municipality that's in 15205 zip code. That was part of the analysis, and vice versa. We know that, at least in Green Tree, that Mr. Schuster also worked with, there's probably about 175 addresses that Green Tree is collecting that belongs to Crafton. So I don't have the report, but I know that's some of the results that came out of that. It still needs to be resolved among the taxing bodies. So.
Fair enough. So I think that's, so it sounds like you have some of the results. So the beta test was
The
done.
beta test was free to work out a model, and he admitted we were the guinea pig for the type of model to get that type of information. So.
He said that too,
Yeah.
he pre-presented. So I would suggest that the good body that, table this motion, ask Mr. Schuster to come to the working agenda for a real short presentation on about the beta test, and then put that back on the agenda for
The following meeting.
I'd also like to see, if this was the beta to have a working model, what are we gonna use going forward? Because if the beta test was to kind of guinea pig and figure out what we could do, what is the plan that we're going to go with
Based on those results.
based on those results?
There are technical questions you can ask Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he'll be welcome. He'll be amenable to come to our next meeting. So.
Tell me you need a few minutes of his time, that's all.
Okay, so I asked to entertain a motion to table this motion?
Before you do, if it's tabled, do you want John in my office to review it prior to?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
the contract.
I'll do it now, yeah, that way if you're ready to go, it'll be reviewed.
Okay,
Good. We have it attached.
Okay, yeah, I have it, yep, it was Didn't know if you wanted to review it ahead of time.
So if we table the motion, you still review it?
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, I'll entertain a motion to table that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll take action at a future time.
We'll probably vote on that.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes?
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. Motion to advertise an ordinance to incur debt in the amount not to exceed 1.3 million to satisfy an outstanding litigation matter.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Excuse me, 1 second, I'm sorry. Do we have to determine the manner or time period or anything like that this evening?
This is on to add.
This is
Oh,
to
this is
advertise
actually-
for the ordinance.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we do it right.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Post?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to advertise to amend ordinance number 1610, changing a snow event from 4 inches to only a snow event, without any designation for depth of snow.
You know, I'm gonna interrupt, I'm sorry. 'Cause you can't just advertise an ordinance that you don't know the terms of what that ordinance are.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do need to
Yeah.
discuss the options tonight.
Yes, you do.
Okay,
And you need to give direction to the manager so he knows what ordinance he's advertising.
that's, okay.
So all you've basically approved is you're gonna incur $1.3 million in debt. I understand your manager has provided to you a couple different options as to the term of that debt
Okay,
and the interest rate, and you need to decide, I think your deadline's Friday, so today's your last day
so we
to
need
act.
to, we need to do that here.
Correct, absolutely.
Okay, so I thought,
All right.
so we need to back up.
No, you made one motion for 1.3 million, you can have another motion on the specific terms, and then you're not undoing what you're doing.
Oh, okay. So would one of us have to throw out one of
So
the
I'll have to
options?
entertain another motion. What would the wording of it be, right? I'll entertain a motion to determine the terms.
No, I think someone would make a motion, like, for example, I move that the terms of the debt be 3 years at 1.79%, or somebody would make it, you know, one of the options that you were given.
And then we could discuss, and if we discuss and kind of close on a different option, we could table or we could withdraw that motion and enter a new motion on the
Correct.
actual terms.
Correct.
Fair enough.
We all don't have the terms anymore in front of us.
Yeah, why can't we keep those? What's the story there?
Executive session.
Thank you.
That piece of it isn't, you know, there were two men, I was given the same thing you were, there was a memo. Part of it is executive session confidential, and part of it relates,
And we're not
related.
Now,
Well, you should be able to keep the part that relates to the public meeting, because you didn't discuss, you know, your finances.
Nobody has any writing for
Executive
this
session.
meeting, I don't know which one. I don't know which one.
she's a note taker.
You say we can keep part of this?
Yeah, there's a part of it that was meant to be discussed in this meeting, this public meeting, but it was happened to be stapled together with the other items. So the part that as relates to the loan terms, we can talk about and keep, the other part we cannot.
Yeah.
So let me say it this way, right? I'll suggest a motion for the first one, right? I'll entertain a motion to finance the 1.3 million at 1.79% at $111,510 per quarter for a term of 3 years.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so let's discuss this motion.
I'm thinking, maybe it's 5-year term.
I have to agree with Councilman Phillips. I'm feeling that the first option of a 3-year note, it's too much to incur. We would have to cut the budget significantly, or that would be a significant, not significant, I don't want to make an alarm, but we would have to possibly look at raising the millage in order to balance out the possibility of paying the debt. I was personally thinking about the 5-year note myself. I understand it's 5 years, and the 5-year note is $1.3 million at 2.10%, which is $68,643 each quarter, which equals $274,572 per year for 5 years.
Let me just mention, those are estimates, that might be off a buck or two at the time of signing, whether the interest rate changes or not, but
Right.
that's our best information now.
The only point I would make is, I think we should be aware that even at that rate, we may not find the money, and may still require a millage increase.
May.
May.
But it would be, it stands to reason it would be less of an increase than the 3-year option.
Sure, it's almost half as much, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's considerably less, but I just don't,
Right.
I don't want us to fall into a understanding that, well, we're picking the one that doesn't require a millage increase. We may still be picking one that requires a millage increase if we cannot find the money, because we do not have this in our sinking fund,
Right,
right? And that would be really the, the sinking fund minus any other, debts that are being, absolved, right? Short of that, where we have to identify where this money comes from.
and I don't personally, I don't feel that the 7-year note at a 2.5% interest rate, or the 10-year note at a 2.79% interest rate would be in the interest, of laboring out.
Yeah, I think it's, having this been going on since 1999, and it's 2014, it's some 14 years, I don't want to incur this for 10 more years, right? I don't want to be talking about this for 24 years.
Right, and we've already inherited this, we don't want somebody, an additional council to inherit as well. So I think 3 or 5, but I'm more in favor of the 5 myself.
Well, can we just,
Motion on a 3-year.
well, no, we just want to cover a couple, so are we in agreement that 7 and 10 is not, are out?
Yes, we
All
are.
right. So it's down to either 3 or 5. So we can vote on the 3, and if that vote is, if that motion doesn't carry, I'll entertain another motion for the 5, and we'll take a vote on that.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on the terms, or, any other, I believe we have one of these 2 options, but if anyone else could suggest a third option?
Would it be feasible for our solicitor to maybe contact the litigant and see if,
I would not, I'd stop you right there.
Okay.
That's executive session stuff, that's something that we would discuss if it's dealing with the case. Not something we would discuss out here.
okay.
At this point, I believe it's, and councils up until this point have exhausted legal, and therefore it's time to pay.
Okay.
It's not, we need to settle this, it's from 1999, let's just settle this.
Can we go into an executive session real quick? Mr. President?
If you want to, you can do that, you would announce that you want to go, but, I would tell you, you can't do it with a motion on the table. It looks disingenuous to do that. You have to vote on it, and then you move on to the next matter, and if the next matter is that you want to call an executive session, we all walk in, have an executive session, and come back out.
Okay, well, I think we're voting on the 3-year note, we're gonna vote down, is that right?
We're gonna
Well, we
vote.
have to vote.
Vote, okay.
So let's take a roll call vote on the motion on the table.
Mr. Amendola,
No.
Ms. Amendola,
No.
Mr. O'Brien,
No.
Mr. Phillips,
No.
Ms. Post,
No.
Mr. Hayes.
No. Motion does not carry. So, if I want to entertain the idea of,
I'd like-
going to
I'd like to move to make a motion for the 5-year, I'd like to move that instead. Can I do that? Can I make the motion
You just
instead?
did, yeah. you
Okay, I'd like to make the motion to move for a 5-year note.
So moved.
Motion's been moved and seconded.
I would suggest,
Oh yeah, I moved you second.
I would just like 2 minutes in an executive session.
you have a motion and second. To the extent you take comment, you should take public comment because these weren't on your agenda.
Oh,
They're somewhat related, but the specifics of it weren't. So I would,
Since we're taking public comments, what are the terms for the 7-year? Just out of
the
curiosity.
terms for the 7-year were, the interest rate was 2.45% at 50,665 a quarter, so 50,000 versus 68,000, roughly.